Hi, Lisa Schermerhorn here, and welcome to my show Where Truth Lies on the Grassroots Warrior Network. I am thrilled and excited to introduce you to someone really special. Her name is Marjory Wildcraft, and she's the founder of the Grow Network, which is a community of people based in modern self-sufficient living. She's also been featured by National Geographic as an expert in off-grid living. I think you'll find her really fascinating, and she has some pretty amazing products for you to check out as well. If you're interested in a healing, you can have a quantum healing with me or hypnosis, anything to remove blocks. You can get to me through my website, lisamindset.com. If you are interested in a wave watch, I can get you $100 off at Mindset 100, and the links are all below. And if you are interested in reversing aging, and all kinds of really amazing things that these patches do, find out, contact me. I can get you wholesale pricing, and these patches changed my life. So anyway, if you have a story that you think that my audience would enjoy, please contact me. You wouldn't believe how many people contact me, and I actually interview them and put them on the show. Please like, share, and subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me to get my interviews to more people. Anyway, enjoy the show. Hi, Lisa Schermerhorn here, and welcome to the Grassroots Warrior Network. And you're on my show Where Truth Lies. And welcome to, and this is her name, Marjory Wildcraft. And she is really remarkable. I've had a chance to talk to her before we started recording. She's all about backyard food production. She was featured in National Geographic on Off the Grid Living, host of Mother Earth News, and many other accolades. Welcome. Thank you
I
so
think,
much for being here.
yeah, thank you. I mean, the name, the grassroots, like that's what I'm all about is
Yeah.
is people, like real people doing real stuff. And
Right.
backyard food production is about real people doing real stuff.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's interesting because the more you educate yourself on our food and
hmm
what our food system is, and the more Robert Kennedy Jr. starts talking about food dyes and
hmm
chemicals in our food and how it's impacted our children and ourselves. I mean, this is so important for us to really understand about growing our own food and being responsible and knowing what we're putting into our bodies.
Yeah. Now I appreciate RFK for what he's doing, and that's like the tip of the iceberg. It's
Right.
we used to say you could be a perimeter shopper, be
Yeah.
okay. That is not true anymore either.
No.
Stanford University, I think it was 2016, did a big research project where they compared organic food with conventionally grown food. And with the organic food, you get a little less toxins on it, but there's not nutritional density, which I found really surprising. So
Wow.
we are lacking in nutrients from it's just really, really hard to get anywhere. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So we get a lot to do.
So let me ask you a question because we assume organic, it's been naturally fertilized.
hmm
Is it the seeds? Is it how they've been hybridized over the years? Is it our soil? What is it that we're not getting the nutritional density that generations ago?
It is a little bit on the seeds, not that much, but yeah, most organic farmers use hybrid seeds, and they have to. They don't use genetically modified, but they have to because they're focused on production, and so they
Right.
need crops that produce consistently, that they can sell and quickly. So, but the seeds are not really the biggest problem. The soil really is. Also, just a big picture, the organic stand, like 20 years ago, when you bought organic food, you were really getting what you think organic should be, right?
Right.
But when the US government started getting into the organic standards, it has just been deteriorated and deteriorated and deteriorated now
Right.
to the point where even biosludge products are allowed and considered for organic production. So most
So
people
can
don't.
you explain what biosludge is?
Yeah,
Because
most
I
people
think
I
I know
know
what that
are.
is.
It's what you think it is horrible. So, our municipalities, right? When you flush the toilet, where does that go, right? It's a real good question, and it's a problem we have collectively, humanity has. So, they take the solid part and they do a minor composting to it, and then they treat it with chemicals, oddly enough. But the soil that gets the compost or the soil that gets created from that is absolutely loaded with everything that everybody flushed down, right? So pharmaceuticals, glyphosate, heavy metals, wastes from hospital and industry, the polish that your Aunt Julia didn't want anymore and flushed down the toilet. Drano, Mr. Liquid Plumber. I mean, there's some horrible stuff
Wow.
that's in there. And so what do they do with this? So they bag it up into 40 quart bags and sell it to you as a consumer. Almost all of your big box stores have this to some extent, and even a lot of local nurseries. They also, by the truckload, either sell it or give it away to farmers. And and I have tested this, so I'm not making this up. There are high levels of forever chemicals, PFAS, in there. There's high levels of all kinds of stuff in there. And we've been doing this since maybe the 1970s or so. I mean, it's been a long
Wow.
time. So this
Yeah.
stuff has been distributed everywhere. And the EPA knows it. The EPA knows it and they fully condone it. In fact, they had a study. There was one that was done in 2000 and another repeat of it in 2016, where they analyzed, I think it was 94 municipalities,
Hmm.
and 100% of them had forever chemicals in it. And these things, and some of these brand names you might recognize. There's a company in Milwaukee. They are one of the biggest producers, and they ship all over the nation. It's called Milagronite.
Hmm.
It's terrible. Austin has what they call Dillo dirt. I think organicite or something like that over there in Oregon. I mean, it's all over.
But it's sold as organic.
Yeah. In big letters, it'll say organic on the bags. And I've bought bags. I live in Puerto Rico and I bought bags of it. I run a community garden. Of course, I run a
Hmm.
community garden, right? And we tell her, you have to, we're growing everything organically. And people would buy these big bags of soil and it says organic on it. I'm like, you can't use that. And they're like,
Wow.
you know, now I'm very, very optimistic about and hopeful about this. I've been working with a group of researchers and we have developed a minerals and microbes product that can actually destroy the forever chemicals
Wow.
and make the heavy metals biounavailable. And it also really deeply, deeply fertilizes your garden. And I know this because I've tested it. So, I've sent in
Wow.
I couldn't believe it when I first heard it. I met these guys and we're working on another project together and wasn't specific about them running. I'm like, and they're saying, no, we can do this. And I'm like, go away. I don't believe you, like, forget it. But we kept running into each other because we're on this same
Right.
project. And finally I said, all right, I can handle this very simply. I just built, some raised beds and filled them with terrible soil and applied it to one and not to the other. And I thought I would only test the forever chemicals because they're forever chemicals, right? And like,
Right.
right? And my jaw absolutely, I mean, it was on the floor when I
Wow.
got the test results back. And so since then, I've been duplicating it and I've, promoting it and talking about it and showing people exactly what I do. And I now have a national laboratory that approached me early this year, and they said, "Well, we're desperately looking for a solution for this," and so they have bought some set from me, and they actually, and it's great because the testing for this is to do a before and after test. It's $1,000, so my limited
Wow.
budget is limited, but this is a national laboratory, and they're able to run. I think they're going to run 20 different trials. So those results should be coming out fairly soon. I also have homesteaders in different parts of the country that are doing this and duplicating it. So I'm very hopeful because we do have a sewage problem, right? We do have big cities, and that's an issue.
Right.
But if we just add this extra step to their already existing compost system, and apply these minerals and microbes. And I will tell you from experience, when you take that, I call it shit soil. You take that shit soil, and, you don't actually want to touch it. When you open the bag, you can smell there's something really wrong with it. And the way that I knew these minerals and microbes were doing something kind of magical was what you have to take, there's a standard procedure for taking a soil test. You take a shovel in and 6 inches, lean it back, take, for a 15 square foot area, you take 5 samples. You know what I mean? You mix it up, and like there's a whole procedure, but it involves me shoveling the soil, and I could smell that the soil that had been treated was different, and it smelled really good and earthy and rich. And that's what
Wow.
happens. It's transformation. It's unbelievable. So that's been something I've been working on. I don't normally start an interview out like this.
No, but you know what? So is that available to the public yet, or still in R&D?
We
Like
we we have started selling some, and I have to say that please bear patience with us because we fits and starts and availability, and I don't know how many small business owners you're dealing with, but I'm going to tell you there is a supply chain crisis already going
mm,
on. But we do have it, and it's at thegrownetwork.com / soil dash detox. And if people go to where I really recommend you go is go to backyardfoodproduction.com, where I have a free webinar, and then there's also the links and information about the soil detox kit in that. So
okay.
it's very hopeful.
So we'll have all these links for people to go on because I'm ready. I'm ready to start my garden. I was
Yeah,
I was telling
yeah.
Marjorie this story before we started recording, but I had always wanted to grow a garden, but I was intimidated because I didn't know how to. I didn't know what to do.
Hmm.
And a friend of mine is a master gardener, and so she helped me set up a raised bed. And she said, buy this soil, buy this fertilizer, and set it up, and this is what you do. So I went home, and instead of reading the directions like most people do, I literally just took the soil and I dumped a 40-pound bag of fertilizer into my soil.
Yeah.
And my friend Carol was horrified, and she's like, okay, you're either going to burn out the roots or you're going to have this explosive a garden. And I had cucumbers like overnight they were growing cucumbers and zucchinis and lettuce. It was insane. But I haven't had that since, and it's discouraged me. So I'm really
Yeah.
excited with the idea because with the chemtrails and everything raining down on us, um, that the idea of being able to clean up my soil, because another problem we've had in Vermont was with all the farms, and a lot of the farms are near Lake Champlain, and
Hmm.
those who use the chemical fertilizers, and our system that deals with all of the septic waste um, overflows when we get these downpours. So we were pumping millions of gallons of raw sewage into our
Oh,
lake,
oh my gosh.
along with all the fertilizer and everything from the cows and the farms all around Lake Champlain. And last year I went to go, I love going to Lake Champlain. It's so beautiful. You've got the Adirondacks and the Vermont mountains. It's one of
Oh,
my favorite things. I went to go in the water and there was a smell, and I couldn't go into the water. It was really dirty.
oh,
And it made
geez.
me really sad. So the idea of something that could clean up, could something like this work in the water system as
Yeah.
well
Yeah.
without,
These guys have also cleaned up waterways, and
that's
they've
amazing.
been working on this actually for several decades. And where they were doing a lot of experimentation is with the cannabis growers, who it used to be
Right.
illegal. And these are such mind-blowing concepts that, if you
Right.
talk to most university type people or credentialed type people or people who are so indoctrinated into the educational system, they'll go, this is not possible. But if you're growing cannabis illegally, you have a little bit more of an open mind. And so they've done a lot with that. And then as things have gotten more, they've gotten more traction. So they mostly have dealt with large agricultural. They were telling me about some results in a vineyard in California, and these guys are growing grapes. And with grapes, there are two things you want. You want the weight of the grapes and, production,
Right.
which is the yield, but then you also want to make sure the Brix number stays high. And for those that don't know what Brix is there's a way to test the leaves or the fruit, and it basically gives you an indication of how much sugar content is in
Okay.
there. And the level of sugar content is directly proportional to the amount of mineral content in the
Oh,
thing. And normally, if you're growing grapes, you can really push them and get higher yield if you really saturate them with water. But then they become watery grapes, and their Brix goes down. And these guys have been using this minerals and microbes, and they had the yield go up and the Brix go up, which is completely unheard of. So and by me partnering with them, I'm like, look, guys, I really specialize in people that have a quarter acre lot and a homestead, a suburban type
right.
situation, or maybe a small farm up to 5 or 10 acres. That's the people that I serve and the niche that I work for. And again, on family and individual food security, right? So Joel Salatin does a fantastic job with small farms as well as a whole bevy of people, but I've always been focused on backyard food production. And so, yeah, so we're developing the kit just for that. So the kit that I have is for up to 5 acres, but if you have a quarter acre lot, it's basically 20 applications. And the tests that I've done for the first ones I did, for example, it was over 2 months and I applied it every other week. So I only got 4 applications in. And we saw two of the forever chemicals completely destroyed. And then of the other five that were remaining, they dropped either 10 to 85%.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty significant. I lost access to that garden, and then so now I'm reduplicating all of it somewhere else. So, but I'm very, very hopeful about the future. Before that, I used to be so discouraged because chemtrails are a thing,
Yes.
and it's horrible what's going on. And I uh, am just waiting for some vigilante groups to put an end to that because it wouldn't take more than 100
They
men
they are.
strategically.
They
Yeah.
are, and I see some of the states, including the state of Vermont, and I know New Hampshire did too, to make it illegal, and I think it's happening. But I remember taking snowballs and clumping them up, and then I saw someone take a lighter to it, so I was like, I'm gonna try this. And I put a lighter to it, and it didn't melt, it burned, it turned black. A
Oh my God.
snowball
Yeah.
turned black. And I was like, why isn't it just melting? And it just sat there in my hand and it didn't melt. So I knew something was up that they were putting in our water and in our clouds. So this is amazing. Now, for someone like me who just has like a small raised bed, would if I were to order, would that
Yeah.
last a couple of years? Like now I
Probably.
have like
Yeah.
10 years worth
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
soil.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Or
I mean,
share it with friends.
yeah, I make smaller batches, and right now I'm living in a rental property.
Yeah.
I've just found the property I want to buy, which is a farm, but for whatever reason, the universe has had me all over the place, and I trust the universe. It's been good.
Yes.
But I'm container gardening and then I'm managing a small community garden and I mix it up and you can mix it up for whatever size you need. Just do
Okay.
the old kitchen thing, 3 teaspoons, 1 tablespoon. Let me divide by that, right? You got it.
Apparently
Yeah.
I didn't learn that part in school.
Figure it out. Use an AI. It's all good. Yeah.
I have so many questions, but one thing that comes up because you live in a temperate climate that you can grow all year round.
Hmm.
So, what do you suggest for people who live in, the northern climates when you really are, I often still get snow in May. Like by
Yeah.
the first 2 weeks of May, it finally then it switches over and turns 80 degrees. How do you manage that? Because your growing season is so much shorter.
Yeah, yeah. So by the way, just for your information, I spent a lot of time homesteading in Texas, which it's like homesteading through the apocalypse. We have flooding, we have droughts, we have freezing, we have heat, we have insects. I mean, it's like Texas is.
Wow.
Texas will make you a badass. Uh, and I spent a couple of years in Colorado growing there. And yeah, now I'm in Puerto Rico, so I'm in the tropics. And
Right.
honestly, I've really enjoyed that because when you really start to gain some skill into something, often moving, like going from Texas to Colorado was a complete like, whoa, what I
Yeah.
learned there, I mean, there's a lot of things that are transfer, but then, different timing. But I'd also like to suggest, I know we're talking about gardens and
Hmm.
everybody thinks of Marjory Wildcraft, they think of gardens. And my God, I even got into who's who in America for having helped create so many gardens. But honestly, the most important, if you're really talking about food production in a backyard, animal products are actually far more efficient and easier than gardens. And I really, when people talk to me about like I want to grow food, I say get some chickens, get some laying hens,
Oh,
and I recommend people start out with 6 laying hens. There's a very specific reason for that, but let me go into some of the numbers on it.
yeah.
A laying hen, most of them will lay about 250 eggs a year. They take a little time off, if it gets too cold, gets too hot. They also need to change out their feathers. It's a process called molting. But 250 eggs a year, 6 of them, it's going to be 1,500 eggs a year. And
Wow.
that means you can have 3 egg omelets for breakfast for the rest of your life, right? You have got breakfast handled. And then you'll have 33 dozen eggs to trade or give away or use in other recipes. And the total, if we use the USDA's numbers for a medium-sized egg, is I believe it's 62 calories per egg. So this can be about 94, 95,000 calories. Now, most people would say, "Hey, Marjorie, that's a bad word. Calorie? Like nobody wants I mean, yes, you do, because we are in the middle of a gigantic financial oh, one of my cats just jumped. I'm sorry. We are in the middle of this gigantic financial change up on the planet. The US dollar as the reserve currency is in its last dying days.
Right.
And pretty soon, the calorie will become a unit of currency. I don't want to freak anybody out or fear anybody out, but like that's the reality of what's going on. You need to look for that and adapt. But if eggs are great, like I've and there's that free webinar at backyardfoodproduction.com, and I show you what a chicken coop looks like and a run. You can fit it in the size of a parking spot. If you're somewhat handy, you can just build it right from the plans that are there. And if not, hire somebody or some of those. They have these fabulous kits. Oh my God, I think I would like to live into some of those houses. Some people go overboard with their chickens. But really, you can have that done in a couple of weekends. Go buy some chicken feed. Now, when you sign up for that webinar, I will send you a video that shows you how you can grow all the chicken or create all the chicken feed for your feeds
Oh,
for your chickens for free. But don't do that phase one. Phase one, get the chickens, build the coop and run, get into the habit of checking on them and collecting eggs. That's phase one. That's a lot to learn, and that's a new lifestyle. And then phase two will be to figure out how to grow all the feed for the chickens, right? So, because we are talking about, full on self-reliance.
well, I remember, was it last year or the year before, there were suddenly the hens stopped laying for a little while. And I saw something that went back to Purina chicken feed and any other the Purina product based. And I mean, this is just one person's thing that I saw. I don't want to get sued by Purina, but that they had changed something within the recipe. And someone started playing around and they were using marigolds and other more, they made their own feed and then
Mhm.
their chickens started laying again.
Yep,
And so it's been really interesting how you really have to pay attention to what your animals are eating because you're getting that in you.
exactly. Yeah. It was Tractor Supply
Yeah,
had a big issue, and I think they partner with Purina, but
yeah,
it was their feed. People were feeding
yeah.
the feed, and it didn't have some critical nutrients, and the birds weren't laying. So,
Yeah.
yep, you're absolutely right. And what they eat is what you eat, which is why we're wanting to grow our own food.
And
Is that what
and
we know?
so there were two things because there's also this whole process about pasteurization of eggs and also and I've seen the difference in the colors of the yolk. Like living in Vermont, we have all these farmers markets and I'm sure other places, other states do too. And you take home and I've become in love with duck eggs. They're
Uh-huh.
like this big.
Yeah. Well, yeah, close. The goose eggs, that's like a goose
The
egg.
goose,
Yeah.
they're big and they're delicious. So you can mix it up, but you see the difference in the color of the yolk, where some of them are this bright orange and some are almost like barely, golden yellow. So I don't know if I know
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. And by the way, up in Vermont, ducks might be they actually are going to be a better choice of laying poultry just because they're built for the cold.
yeah,
Chickens we've developed all kinds of breeds that do well in the north, but they're actually originally, fowl, jungle fowl. So
yeah,
the further north you go, the less you can make it work, but you have to start doing a lot more. Whereas ducks are way more resilient. Now they do eat a lot more, but they actually will lay more than 250 eggs a year. They'll lay a lot
wow,
more. And eggs are magical. They're just an incredible food source. So, everybody knows the anatomy of it. You got an egg, you kind of got that clear white stuff, which is called the albumin, and then you got the yellow stuff, which is the yolk. By the way, you don't need a rooster. The hens will lay fine without them, although those eggs are not viable. They're not ever going to turn into chicks. But if there was a rooster, sometimes you'll see those farm raised ones. There'll be like a little speck of red in there.
right, right.
And what that is the genetic material from the rooster, which is starting the that little tiny bit of genetic material when mated with the egg all of the nutrition that is needed, both macro and micronutrient nutrients that is needed to turn that slimy mess into a chick that has beak and eyes and wings and legs and a heart and stomach. And I mean, it turns that whole slimy mess into this wonderfully viable little creature that has the strength to peck itself out of its shell. The mama doesn't do it for it. The chicks have to do it themselves from the inside and be viable for at least a few days because not all the chicks hatch at once. And sometimes you got to wait around for your other nestlings to come on out or whatever before mom gets you all out there pecking on the ground. I mean, that's just an incredible food source.
It is. And
It,
and here's the fallacy about cholesterol. Our brains are made up of cholesterol. And my understanding is, and I'm not a licensed medical professional, so this is just something that I heard, that cholesterol levels in our bodies used to be up into the 200s, which was normal. And when the new cholesterol medications came out, they suddenly lowered what our cholesterol levels should be, that it should be below 200. And, now you see all of these issues with Alzheimer's and dementia and all of those things. And I just find it a very interesting correlation.
I completely concur, and that was said beautifully because really that's been a whole phase. I'm kind of glad we're almost all through
Right.
that.
So eat
Yeah.
your eggs. It's okay.
Eat your eggs. Yeah, I eat eggs. Really, I eat 2 or 3 eggs a day at least, and
Me too.
been doing that for decades. And you're right about the yolks. It's beautiful. There's really deep, deep orange ones, and chickens are normally insectivores. That's their favorite food, and there's a lot of protein and fat in insects, and chitin and other things, and that's what helps that yolk to turn that really bright, beautiful orange color. But the more nutrition that the bird generally has is going to be reflected in the yolk. Boy, those pale white yolks, you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Maybe I'll feed that to the cat. My cats are so spoiled they won't even eat that
I
though.
bet. I
Yeah.
bet.
I will say that chickens are
Yeah.
just delightful too. I mean, they're pets with benefits, and they have personalities and they'll have antics, and it's just a wonderful addition to your life. This is not a chore. This is not going to be, I mean, it's going to be something new for sure. And if you have children or grandchildren, traditionally taking care of the hens and collecting the eggs and bringing them in, or taking care of the chickens was children's work. And it's very, very meaningful to them. If you've got small kids, you're like, okay, and they usually love it. They're like, this is it. I've got something important to do, and I'm helping mom and dad bring in breakfast, and so it's so much more than just the food.
Absolutely. So we went deep quickly and we didn't really get to know anything about you. So I'd
Yeah.
love for people to get familiarized with you. How did you even get into all of this? Like
Yeah.
what got you?
Well, thanks for asking. My has nothing to do in my background. I was not, born to hippie parents in a commune or a farmer's daughter or anything like that. I actually grew up in South Florida, and our family was a little bit poor. In the United States, even if you're poor, you're way far off better than
Right,
anywhere else in the world.
right.
Uh, and I ended up getting a degree in engineering, and I had always wanted to travel overseas, and I got a job in Hong Kong. I was managing a cellular telecommunications network there with between Motorola and Hutchison Telephone, and the Hong Kong Chinese are very interested in money. I think that's like the capital of capitalism on the planet.
Right.
And a couple of the guys there that were working for me said, "Hey, Marjorie, there's this guy, Robert, who's teaching a class all about wealth. You want to go?" And I said, "Well, what do we know? Who is this guy, Robert?" And they said, "We don't know." But I went anyway. And this guy, Robert, just blew my mind with all kinds of stuff that you're never going to learn in school about money and wealth and how it works. And it ultimately inspired me to leave engineering. And I created a real estate investment business based in Austin, Texas, that was so successful that Robert asked me if I would be a testimonial, and I ended up being the lead testimonial for Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was on national television for like 4
Wow.
years on these infomercials. Yeah. So I was having a great time. I'd made my first million before I was 40. I
Wow.
mean, that's what I thought you did. I mean, that's what I understand the world to be. I was
Right.
fully what we call in the matrix, right? I was really fully engaged with that, and I didn't realize or see any need for any alternatives. So, in the way I got into growing food was like it was just completely coming out of nowhere. I was volunteering on a project to get locally grown food into an elementary school. One of my friends was Steve Bridges, who was the president of the Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. And Steve had this guy, absolutely, I'll help out with this, of course, right? Even though my own kids, I was going to homeschool, but like this is just a no-brainer, right? So,
Right.
and it was, I'll never forget that meeting when the whole thing finally, it utterly was a complete failure. And I mean, it hit me like the proverbial,
Wow.
Mack truck or stage 4 cancer diagnosis or whatever. And it was very simple. We realized there were not enough farmers in all of Bastrop County to provide the vegetables for one small rural elementary school. And Texas has some big counties, and Steve knew all the farmers across the state, and they're just it just really I realized, there's only 4 days worth of food supply in the grocery stores. It travels to you an average of 1,500 miles. And I was surrounded by 20 million Texans who are armed to the teeth. And it just was this big wake up call that, like, wait a minute, there are scenarios where no amount of money will
Right.
get basic necessities. And I think I've been, climbing up the ladder on the wrong wall. And I really have to reevaluate everything. So I ended up selling the whole real estate investment business, and we bought up a ranch, a small ranch outside of town, and went full prepper mode. And at first it was really heartbreaking because, I mean, I'm used to signing 100,000, 500,000, $1 million checks. It's like that's not a
Mm.
big deal. And here I am in front of this tomato plant just sobbing because I can't get tomatoes, like what the heck, it's not, it wasn't pretty. But I figured a lot out. I spent time with a lot of other really great gardeners and farmers and taking all kinds of classes and reading books and permaculture certifications. And yeah, and one of the first things you realize when you start growing food is that you really can't do it on your own. And one of the biggest myths in the survival and preparedness movement is the lone survivor.
Right.
The guy who has his guns and his wife and kids behind him and they live way the heck out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, the real joy in life is celebrating birthdays or, you know, community, hang as somebody recognized, giving to other people, sharing, I
Right.
mean, and we need each other in not only because emotionally, but also because, you just can't possibly know all of it, right? You just can't possibly do everything. We really are fundamentally come from, villages or tribes
Right.
with other people. Yeah, so I started realizing right away I would have to teach other people, and I started doing that. And everybody's like, "This is so great, Marjorie! You've got to make a video out of it." And I made a video out of it, and then we made a website, and then nothing sold. But we'd sunk back then. Video production was very expensive. We'd sunk about 30,000 of the family savings
Wow.
into this, and I said, I got to sell this to, and then at that moment I didn't realize it, but I became a business owner and, digital marketer and started figuring out how to build a business. And then once you realize there's one, and then more I learned, we created more and more products. Like, how do you treat infections without antibiotics? Or, I've always had problems with my teeth. What are some of the alternatives to dentists and what other things can we do? And then growing food, there's so many wonderful vectors, beekeeping and goats and chickens and ducks and fruit trees and food forests and beekeeping and, I mean, there's mushrooms, there's so many
Wow.
wonderful things you can do. So you get to, the rest of my life, I'll be exploring and playing with all these different things. So yeah, I ended up creating the whole business out of it, the Grow Network. And I've been doing this now for, whew, almost 20 years. And yeah, actually, at this point, one of my team was like looking up all the numbers in the database and contacts, and they're like, Marjorie, you've helped several million people at this point in time.
Wow.
Keep doing it.
That's amazing because I know, the whole idea of growing food has been taken out of the families,
Hmm.
right? It's like we became urbanized and everyone got brought into cities and convenience became everything. So
Hmm.
the idea of, I remember as a little girl, I said, I'd love to grow my own garden. And my parents looked at me like, what?
What? Yeah.
So they had someone come over, and I remember planting all the seeds, but then they left me, and then I didn't know the difference between a weed and the actual plant. And so I sat there as a little girl going, I don't know what to do with this.
Right.
And I have family members who are really prolific with their gardens. I mean, really extraordinary gardens, and they're beautiful. And something you talk about with food, one of the things that I had heard, and I don't know if they're going to be doing it anymore, I hope not, was it was actually cheaper to produce food by shipping the animals or the chicken to China, make chicken nuggets there and ship it back or whatever they were making. And that's
I've
where a huge part of our food supply was coming from. And I was like, how can that be possible?
I've heard the same thing and I have no idea. But on the other hand, we've been getting and I believe me, I think these tariffs are a terrible, terrible thing. But
Mm,
I can go to Home Depot and buy a package of a set of screwdrivers, and there's 6 screwdrivers with pretty decent steel and plastic
mm,
handles all in a package, and it's, $20. Like, how can that be? That doesn't make, or a ceiling fan with a motor and wiring and blades at $99. I'm like, this cannot last forever because it's also like the food supply, even just the vegetables, like for every calorie that's on your plate, it took 10 calories of energy to get it there.
Right.
This is not sustainable. So the one of the taglines for the Grow Network, of course we got taglines. I've been to
Mm.
business school, right? Is homegrown food on every table. And it's kind of been a little bit of a joke because whether you embrace it and do it now and enjoy it and do it on your own time, or whether you're drug into it, at some point in time, this whole thing is so unsustainable. It's always going to be, it's going to be homegrown food on every
Yeah.
table. So it's kind of a joke, right? But yeah, we live in an extraordinary period in history, and I honestly feel very, very grateful to be alive because it is extraordinary. And I
Yeah.
don't think a lot of people are actually prepared to go back to what you're talking about of how people don't grow food anymore. Is I believe that there has been an intentional psyop to
Right.
stop people from it. And because if you're growing your own food, you become more sovereign and more independent and less manageable, less controllable. And if you think about it, it's very, very simple evidence is look at every single movie that you've been watching or sitcom or, a lot of the music. A farmer is always portrayed as a complete idiot,
Mhm.
Like, if somebody's growing food, it's either because they're a migrant worker and they're desperate or they're some doddering senior that's got Alzheimer's or something. I mean, it's never shown full, vibrant, happy, joyful. It's just such an incredibly wonderful activity. They don't want you to know that, actually.
Right. I have
Yeah.
a friend who bought 30 acres. She's in Vermont, and she went back to the old-fashioned way of gardening.
Hmm.
And I was at her place in the fall, kind of past season, you would say, because the frost had already come in. But she had romaine heads of lettuce like this big. I'd never
Beautiful.
seen the garden that she had. And broccoli was still growing. I mean, it was vibrant. It was sustaining itself. Like it was going through the frost season.
Hmm.
And for anyone who's ever had a chance to have a frost enhanced carrot, because
Oh,
they draw
yes.
in all the nutrients towards the end. And so in the fall, when the frost comes, if you get to have a local carrot, they're amazing. And I remember years ago, was it in Florida, there was a woman who was arrested for growing her own garden in her front yard. Did
Yeah,
you remember that
I do
story?
remember that. And there are stories that come out from time to time, and I don't think there's a major assault yet
Yeah.
on backyard food production, but I do see it coming.
Mm.
The whole demonization of the bird flu, and they're, blaming it on backyard producers in Florida. It used to be that if you had an orange tree, they came and literally came on your property and cut your trees down because of supposedly some kind of fungus. Personally, I have been shadow banned on YouTube for 5 years or more,
Wow.
which means they let me put my content up,
But
but they
no one
just
will
don't,
see it.
no one sees it, right? And
Wow.
I didn't know that for a while. I just thought, wow, maybe people just don't really, maybe I'm not that good, whatever,
No, I've had that problem too. Mine was suppressed, the shadow band as well, and I was like having these amazing interviews. I'm like, why isn't anyone seeing them?
Yeah,
So
because they
yeah,
control the algorithm, and yeah.
exactly,
Yeah, I've switched
exactly.
over to Substack and Rumble and Brighteon, and if
Yeah,
I'm out on like 10 of them now, which is a little bit of a
great.
chore, but that's the way you have to,
So we'll have to get all of your links so that people can see all of your content.
Well,
So
actually, the simplest one is backyardfoodproduction.com. And when you
okay,
go there,
backyard.
and what I'm offering people there, by the way, I have to say, you live in Vermont, and I'm a
Yeah,
little envious because like you can be a locavore in Vermont. Like people
yes,
there are really into that's one of the exceptions of in the United States, and probably some areas up around Portland also. But the rest of the United States, like the food supply, they're utterly dependent on those just-in-time trucking systems. So but the website is backyardfoodproduction.com. And when you go there, So there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of ways to grow food. And I've spent, 20 years learning and teaching, and I have cherry picked the three easiest and fastest ways for somebody who has no experience, they're older and they're out of shape, to be able to get producing very quickly. And we talked about the example of the chickens, the laying hens, right? And sometimes it's counterintuitive because they're like, I'm going to grow a garden. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. And you do need a garden. But here's something that's even faster and easier, and you can do this any time of year. The
Yes.
gardens are very, as you know, in Vermont, it's very
Very
time,
short season.
very
My
short season.
tomatoes don't start, I can't pick a tomato until August. It's like,
Yeah, and you have to start them indoors probably in February to get them up.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It can be done everywhere. I really, you just need to know where you are and what works and what doesn't, and again, so this webinar is applicable to everybody everywhere, and you'll walk away with a plan for how to produce at least half of your own food in a backyard size space.
Nice.
It's actually only the size of 3 parking spots. Having more space is better, but
Yeah.
I mean, some people, I've been surprised what they call a backyard these days. I'm like, really? They put
So,
these houses all smush them together like,
so do you teach canning and how to preserve food as well? Is that something that people can
yeah.
get on this well? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely. Because and then also home medicine. Oh my God, Vermont has some wonderful, wonderful. You guys have some wonderful herbalists up there. And
Herbalist. Well, I
yeah,
laugh because our state capital of Montpelier is filled with politicians, lawyers, homeopathic doctors, naturopaths, and healers.
that's
It's the
wonderful. Yeah.
funniest thing. It's like this crazy combination.
Oh, yeah. Well, hopefully they'll get a hold of those lawyers and politicians.
Yeah.
Something good will happen there. Yeah, but a lot of people kept asking for home medicine, and so I learned, what herb, because a lot of times people say, "Hey, Marjorie, do you have an herb garden?" And I'm like, "No, actually, a lot of times the wild plants all around you are wonderful medicine." So I very rarely ever grow. I do grow some, but usually I'm wildcrafting, and that's a whole nother thing, foraging,
Right.
acorns and berries. There's all kinds of stuff out there, regardless of where you live, in the
Yeah.
Southwest, in the
But you learn
Northeast.
about like ramps and fiddleheads. I was like, what's a fiddlehead? I moved
Uh-huh.
around. I'm like, it's a season. It's like 2 weeks and they're ferns that are
And
still
those little things,
curled
yeah.
up and you can stir fry them. They're delicious. So there's a lot of really cool. And I have a friend who is a great she forages for mushrooms. And I've heard there's some actual apps because there are mushrooms that look like the
Oh,
ones
yeah.
that are poisonous. So you really need to know what you're doing. So go with a professional.
Go with a
And
professional. And by the way, yeah, I would be very careful. There's some people that on Amazon are writing books with AIs now.
yeah.
And somebody recently sent me one on mushroom foraging that was written by an AI, and it's wrong. Like they're
Wow.
recommending poisonous
Wow.
mushrooms. So personally, I don't, well, most of my homesteading was in Texas, and
Yeah.
that's not a big mushroom state. And I have to say, I've always been a little nervous about mushrooms. So if I go out, I always go out with somebody,
Yeah.
and you eat that first, and then
Yeah, so they teach you how to take logs and prep them and
hmm
soak them and then you can put spores on them and so I have a friend who's in the process of that. So
Yeah.
I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to some shiitakes maybe this year.
I created a whole academy with, I think we have 35 certifications now. Yeah, one of them is
Wow.
how to grow mushrooms, exact same thing you're talking about.
Wow.
And people do that. I've seen that being done in North Florida. People do it here in Puerto Rico. I mean, and then of course in the northeast and northwest, all over. I mean, you can do it. It's amazing all the different places you can grow mushrooms. And even people can grow them in closets and stuff. You're not going to have the big stacked logs like you would outside, but
Right.
there's a lot of solutions for people who are living, because we have a lot of people in apartments or condominiums, and that's an issue, but there's a lot of solutions for that too.
Awesome. So is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to? Because we've kind of gone all over the place, but I just want to make sure that everyone hears what you want to say.
Yeah, I do want to say one of the things. So I got into this out of unbelievable fear and panic. I mean, I had this vision of what would happen if the trucks stopped running. And I mean, really, that saying that we're only like 9 meals away from anarchy is
Right.
absolutely true. And so that's, I got the message from universe, like,
Yeah.
this is what you need to work on. I was like, no, universe, there's other people who are way better. I'm like, no, no, it's you. And I had night sweats and panic attacks. And at
Wow.
that time, lots of family who were like, you're crazy, Marjorie. This is the United States of America. We're never going to have supply chain. We're never going to have empty shelves, that, right? And then, of
Until
course,
we ran out of toilet paper.
we run out, right? And then now they're all like, maybe she's onto something. But it was horrible in the beginning, and I didn't know anything, and I was afraid, and and panicked, and it was difficult. But I will say, and it's so humble, but the process of learning and then being able to grow food has been so healing on every single level. The physical level, I used to have severe allergies, and that's long gone. And I tell people that actually healing is it's not necessarily the quality food you're eating, it's the process of growing food is actually more beneficial to your health. But emotionally, I'm not, if the grocery store's closed, okay, yeah, it's going to be some hardship, but it's not the end of the world for me,
Right. Right.
and I have enough skills to help and teach other people. Mentally, there are reams of studies that show when you eat higher quality food, you score higher on intelligence tests. It's
Right.
just that's just a thing. And then spiritually, you're working with your hands directly with forces of creation. And
Oh,
I'm going to
got the
tell you,
chills.
magic does happen. It's incredible. So every level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you will
Yeah.
be healed by this one really simple activity. And it doesn't, in half an hour a day, it's not much. And it's just so unbelievably transformative. So just really want to encourage as many people as possible because we are in a tremendous vortex of change. And the more of us that are shifting into this lifestyle ahead of time, the easier this change is going to be for everybody.
Wow. So, quick question. I've seen people talk about copper,
Mhm.
and copper is a conductor for energy. Do you ever use the copper in your
The
garden?
the electroculture,
The
I
electric?
haven't done it yet, and I've been
Okay.
getting all kinds of different reports. Some people rave about it, and other people are like, new
Yeah, I
gardening
didn't
fad.
have much response, but I didn't know if that's also because of the chemtrails too. So it would be interesting. I still have, to just take some copper wire on sticks and put them in your garden. One last thing that I always do, and I was actually talking to people about it, is when you eat your food, you are eating the energy of, if you go all the way back to the food chain,
Hmm.
the seeds and who handled the seeds, the
Hmm.
plant who took care of the food as it grew, the
Hmm.
handlers who prepared it to go out to the markets or however, and then who's ever preparing it in a restaurant. So I always go into gratitude with my food and I pray and I thank the whole food chain of how it got there. The Native Americans, actually, the indigenous people, will take the seeds and put them in their mouth
Hmm.
and hold them in their mouth so that the DNA exchange and now the plant will recognize you. I don't know
Hmm.
if you've done anything around that.
I do things like that and I
Yeah.
really do understand the energetics, and I definitely, appreciate my food so much more now that I'm growing it. And even when I get, there's the time when I'm out to eat with other people and it's not the quality that I would normally, but I bless it and I thank it.
Yes.
And, yeah. And we do the best we can with what we have. And that is where I'm really wanting to go more into is energetics and that soil detox kit. I'm
Yeah.
asking the guys, how can this be possible? I mean, this does not fit any existing models of biology or chemistry or anything that we know of. And they're like, yeah, well, it's these microbes, there's 1,000 microbes in there, and there's all kinds of things going on that we just don't know or understand. And I am very, very interested in energetics. Personally, I'm in the training process for a new science called biogeometry, which is working at that level, the energetic level. So
Oh, well, we'll have to talk because I'm a
we'll have a
quantum
good show on
healer.
that. Are you?
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah, yeah,
quantum healer, so we can talk all about that.
yeah. I am so excited. I mean, things are really, really bad right now. And I mean, with the chemicals and the toxicity and the whatever it is, leadership, that I hate to even use that word for those
Yeah,
people that have power. And I think it is going to get worse. But I am very, very hopeful for the future because, we can do this and we have solutions. And a lot of them are just surprisingly simple. I mean, it really has to start with you and me. And
yeah.
I love your grassroots approach because that's really I love that quote from Margaret Mead, never underestimate the power of a small group of committed citizens to make change because indeed that's the only thing that ever has.
Well, that was inspired. The Grassroots Warrior Network was inspired by my good friend Kevin Hoyt. And
Mhm.
he's Vermont. He's run for governor several times, and he's all about bringing attention. He was the one who brought attention to me about Lake Champlain and what was going on and the millions of gallons that were being dumped there. So, yeah, we need to have a conversation of getting this detox kit up into Vermont and helping these a lot of our farmers were convinced to work with glyphosate,
Hmm.
for because these small farmers, it's very hard for them to make a living, and you can get wiped out in a flood. I watched my friend Dave, who owns a local organic farm, and the plants were just starting. We had a torrential downpour, and he lost his entire crop. So it's really, really hard to
Or
make a
even in
living.
Maine
Yeah.
that gave away the processed biosludge to farmers or sold it to them at very low cost and then came back a couple of years later and did soil testing and said you have forever chemicals and they condemned the farm. And I mean, condemning the farm is you can't sell that, you're shut
No.
down. Yeah, that's everything. You're completely, utterly bankrupt. And they're doing
Wow.
it. They did it to 50 farms there.
Wow.
And I haven't kept up with it, but it looks like they were trying to roll that out in other areas. There's really, we
Gross.
live in a really, as I said, we're living in a very difficult time. But again, it's you and me and grassroots things and figuring stuff out and dealing with guys who used to sell stuff to people who were growing pot. Just like all these crazy connections. We can do this. I really believe
Yeah.
we can do this, and I really believe that in this coming turmoil, that we will be able to become free of the shackles of the whatever powers that be that have been managing this planet for a while, and I believe we can actually become free of that.
I agree. I'm actually excited about things to come. And with your new products, you've given me a lot of hope. And actually, I'm excited because I want to get those in so I can get my garden in. So I'm going to order it right away.
Please do. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Marjorie, so much. This was such an honor and a pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you again sometime soon.
Yeah, well, head over to backyardfoodproduction.com, everybody, and I'll be glad to help you out and get you started.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.